Right, so we talked about the mesh light, we talked about dome lights, we talked about portal lights. Let's get into high dynamic range images. This is what we will be plugging into our dome lights. All right, so the advantage of having high dynamic range image over normal imagery is a 24-bit file. Each channel in that 24-bit file, because they're red, green, or blue, each channel has about 256 levels of gray, between absolute dark and absolute white. A 32-bit file has a whole lot more levels of gray that are available to it, about 16 billion levels. So it's exponentially bigger, handles more information. Having all of that information allows us to be able to use it for color and lighting. So it can theoretically have all the intensity information of the dimmest starlight or candlelight to the brightest sun at noon that we can record. All right, developed in the mid-1980s, made accessible to the public, that's us, consumers, not until the mid-1990s. Because digital cameras in the 1980s were virtually non-existent. And when they did come out in the early 90s, they were awful. They had very little resolution. It wasn't until we hit the 1 megapixel or broke the 1 megapixel barrier that it really became, that kind of imagery became available to us. To give you an idea, it was coded in the original C language when it was made, which is kind of like the mother of all modern languages that we use now. All right, there are two common formats. One is HDR, which is the original format when it was made, developed in the 1980s, and the other is an EXR format, sometimes called OpenEXR. This format was developed by Industrial Light and Magic in 2000. Now, the whole theory behind the way HDR images work is that it takes multiple exposures of the same image, an exposure being the brightness of it. So it will take an image at normal exposure, which looks good to us. It'll take one where it allows less light to come in, and it'll take another one where it allows a lot more light to come in. And it puts all of those together so it has all those different levels of light information into one image. So most cell phones have a feature that allow you to make HDR images. What they're doing is they're taking 3 separate JPEGs. You then have to take them into Photoshop, piece them together into a single file, and there's basically like an HDR maker in Photoshop. You can sandwich them together and make your image. But the problem is you're still using a JPEG, which has very narrow bandwidth. So even though you are using probably the highest quality on your phone, it's still not going to quite work out the same. And don't forget that JPEG equals compression. You guys know how JPEG compression works? How? Anybody?
Just know it compresses, that's it.
Yep, compresses. It's because it jumps up and down on it, squeezes the life out of it, and puts it into an image, and we view it. Now, well, sort of, but not quite. Anybody?
Well, so when it does compress it, it kind of loses a lot of its...
Well, let's figure out, well, why do we need compression? Yeah.
So you can put it on like websites without it taking forever to load or something?
Okay, so you can put it on websites without taking forever to load. Yep, that would be one reason. Anything else?
File size?
What's that?
File size?
File size, there's another big one. Portability. We have pretty much everything you get now has gigabyte storage in it, so it's really not as much of an issue as it was a while ago when it was created. But we still use compression. All right, anybody know how it works? All right, so imagine this screen is our image. And I want to make this as small as possible and still maintain a certain level of integrity with it. So as the JPEG compressor, I'm going to go look at it and go, okay, well, a lot of these pixels in here are the same thing. So I can recreate this whole area here using a couple of pixels and discard the rest of them. And when you reopen me up, the image, I will propagate all the missing pixels with the few that I saved. So when I start deleting things like that, I'm shrinking the file size down, because I'm basically removing things that I think I don't need. That's why when you get a JPEG, you'll see what the compression is when it's closed, and then when you open it up in something like Photoshop, it'll tell you what the resolution is, or what it should be. Right, so that works all fine and well for here. I can do it over in this area too, where there's a lot of black over in the OpenEXR area. Now, when I start getting into areas like contrasty type areas, a little bit of white background, some blue here, I can't throw as many pixels out. But there are a few gray pixels in here that I might be able to throw out. Like some that define the curvature because of anti-aliasing. You know, it makes it a little smoother to have gray pixels in there. Especially up here, where the type is really dark. So what happens is, you open me up, I repropagate all the missing pixels with information I have stored. Doesn't look too bad. Right? Trouble is, you do something to me, you save, you close again, I recompress myself, throwing out pixels again. Now, there's no guarantee that I'm going to keep the same pixels I kept last time, based on whatever you do to me. So every time you open and close a JPEG, you are recompressing it again. Especially if you've done something to it and resaved it out. So after 10 times, you've degraded it 50%. And based on your settings, it could throw more or it could throw less out. That's why some images look really terrible. You download some stuff off the internet and it's just like all blocky and pixely and blurry. That's because it's been over compressed. Or you'll download other things that look pretty good and open them up and they may not have been compressed more than once, or they have a high resolution, the highest degree that they can have. Does that make sense? So with that in mind, looking for a format that would keep as much information as possible, and basically HDRI images are raw. They try not to compress anything. So the file sizes are going to be pretty big, and you're also going to have the ability to keep more information in it because 32-bit capacity, meaning you have a whole lot more decimal places to store stuff. All right, so we had a perfectly good HDR format. Why would Industrial Light and Magic create something brand new in 2000? Yeah.
Maybe if you can get like the same type of result, but with the smaller file size or something.
Okay, that would be a possibility.
I don't really know the story behind them.
All right, well, you know who Industrial Light and Magic is?
I feel like I heard it.
Okay, well, let's pick out who they are, because it kind of makes a difference.
They're a visual effects company that works with Lucas to make Star Wars.
Yep.
And they branch on to other movies, especially the Marvel movies.
Okay, so actually George Lucas founded them.
Yeah.
They were part of his ranch. They have audio, they have visual effects, they have movies, they had a whole bunch of stuff. Pixar was part of Industrial, or and part of the whole Lucas thing too. So Pixar branched off. All right, Industrial Light and Magic, part of Lucasfilm. So their job, special effects, visual effects. Next to Weta Digital, they're probably the two biggest effects houses in the world right now. But why would they go to create their own format in 2000?
HDR was getting dated?
HDR was getting dated, okay, possibly. Anybody else? Take a guess.
Maya?
Maya's been around for, at this point, Maya's been around for like 20 years. Anything else going on? You know, a company like that's not going to make anything unless they have to. So it's usually a production / money decision to do it. All right, go ahead.
There's too much limitations with the HDR, maybe?
Well, yep, that would be a good guess. But what would drive them to find that out? And anybody know in film history, 2000, what happened then? Because that drove their decision to create the format. The reboot of Star Wars, Episode 1. Why would that do it, other than had Jar Jar Binks in it? Everybody's favorite. Sony had just developed the first HD digital cam that you could use for production. So what they realized was that the camera itself, being HD, recorded a lot more information than home consumers could use at the time. So what happened was, think back, maybe many of you were still in diapers, I don't know, in 2000. But think about, back then, I'm sure your parents would tell you, or somebody else would tell you, what was the best kind of video quality you could get at the time?
DVD.
DVD would be the best. We're just coming out of, VCRs and VHS tapes. And the resolution of DVDs was 720 by 486. Blu-ray didn't come around until like 2004, 2005. All right, so 2000, that's when they decided that they would go and make their own format so they could record all of the information that the Sony camera could record. They basically wanted to get everything that Sony could record and keep it as intact as possible. So they developed it, and the camera itself was a 2K camera, which at the time was a big deal, because most cameras, it was 35 millimeter film, they were 2K. But the fact that this was digital meant that they had a native copy of something digitally. They didn't have to worry about processing for film, they didn't have to worry about degradation. They could use it, record everything, give full production quality to movie theaters, because movie theaters have always been on the bleeding edge of technology as far as quality goes. They'd be able to display it, but you at home couldn't enjoy it until Blu-ray came along. So by then you've already had Star Wars as a DVD, so now a couple years later you gotta buy it as a Blu-ray because now it has better quality. And then they throw in all the extra stuff too. Alright, so EXR was driven by a decision for quality, money, and what they did was they turned it open source. You guys know what open source is? You probably have all heard it. Open source is basically open to the entire community. Community being anybody out there who would like to use it. The only stipulation is you must, give back to the community. You can share the code. You can use it, modify it, do whatever you want with it as long as you share it back. So that's what they did. They opened it up, made it a completely open format. You could do anything you want. So consequently, it became a standard. And yeah, since they were rewriting it, it is a little more flexible than the original version. All right, so the whole idea behind that is so we can get good images. You guys know we already use OpenEXR now. That's what you're outputting to when you render out of RenderMan. So we're using half OpenEXR, which means we're only using like half of the capability because our images are half the size. All right, so as far as mapping goes, we already know our dome light's an environment sphere, it's round. There are two different types of images you can get on the internet. This one is called a light probe, kind of looks like it was shot in a mirror ball or a garden mirror ball from a great distance away, which technically that's kind of how they do them sometimes. It's spherically mapped already. This one, which is rectangular, the top one, that one, square, rectangular, that's meant to be mapped a different way. Yes?
See, that's what I was asking about earlier, about how they make those. Is there a camera they use, certain camera they use? Or?
Yeah, it's almost like they have special lenses you can use. It's like a wide angle. It's like a super fisheye lens. But you can also do the same thing by having a really long lens and shoot from a great distance away into a reflective surface, like a mirror ball. That's why they kind of look washed out a little bit.
Couldn't you also use
And you have to turn them into a spherically mapped image in Photoshop in order to get that.
couldn't
Yeah.
you also use like one of those like 360 cameras as well?
Nowadays you can, but when these were done, they didn't have 360 cameras.
Oh, okay.
And actually, this is kind of an older format nobody uses much anymore. You'll find these for free on the internet, but you can't use them in RenderMan. RenderMan does not map them. RenderMan only maps what's called a spherical approach, which means it takes a square or rectangle and spherically maps it automatically. If you take this and try to map it to a dome light, you'll get holes in it because it's already spherically wrapped, and then you're spherically wrapping it again, so you wind up with those big blue or black holes that are in it. So for this one, there are tutorials on the internet you can use, and you can just go through in Photoshop and make. But actually, the best way is to do it with a camera that just shoots like regular size film that you can then use, not film, but a regular sensor, and then you can use the highest quality setting you have on it. Questions? All right, so the whole idea, like I said, behind this is just to understand what we're actually getting into our image. And it's going to make a difference because it's going to add light, it's going to add color, and it's going to add an environment picture that we should be able to see in the camera in our render. All right, so one quick note before we start actually putting an image in and talking about how it works. When you are working with environments, even when you go to light, small stuff, if you don't know where you got the file from, always check to make sure color management's turned on. You download something off the internet, you want to get a model, you want to get somebody gave you something from, they may have modeled. Always go into the Maya settings and preferences, the color management, and make sure enable color management is checked on. Not too big a deal right now for us while we're doing this, but it'll make a whole lot of difference when we start adding file textures in this when we get into the texturing stage. Any kind of photo image you bring in. So it's real simple. You just basically turn on color management, make sure it's on. That way it should handle all the colors the same and all the different file types. Should be able to take a JPEG, an EXR, a PNG and make them all sort of look the same inside. So really what it does is all of our monitors, most of them are converted into this color space called sRGB, which is basically just a way to make sure that all the monitors that we have sort of look the same. Whether your phone, your tablet, your computer, your laptop versus a desktop, your LCD versus an LED monitor, they sort of all look the same. It's kind of a color workaround for a long time ago when files were processed and you had big, giant CRT displays. Those curved monitors with radiation on them, they had terrible color management and it was terrible. So this is kind of in a response to sort of undo all the stuff that was done before in a very roundabout way. There's a whole lot more to it going on, but you don't have to worry about that. Just turn it on and you're good. All right. So, oh yeah, Project 4, don't forget there's the color temperature chart. I've also got an LED bulb color temperature link in there too for different color temperatures for LEDs. And you guys are going to go download a free set of HDRI maps from this source called VisPeople. In fact, let's do that first. All right, so inside the practice, we're going to be working with dome lights, portal lights, distant light, mesh light, the old principles of lighting, light direction, intensity, color temperature this time instead of just plain color. And then, of course, shadow quality always goes with it. All right, and before I get into doing the VisPeople thing, let's just kind of do a quick overview. Make sure you assign Pixar surface to everything in your scene. Make sure it's 0.5 in the diffuse color. For today, you guys are going to choose one daytime environment. You have a choice of either interior or exterior. Whichever scene you choose to do, you need to do the opposite for the night. So if you choose to do the exterior day, you're going to have to do the interior night. If you do the interior day, you got to do exterior night. Your choice. So you're going to have two that you're going to do for us. The directions for each one are going to be in the PDFs here. You can download them, you can watch them. It's basically got instructions on what to do, how to do. They're kind of high-level instructions, but you should be able to figure them out. Make a dome light, put an image in it. We're going to do all that. We already made a dome light. We already made portal lights. It's just a matter of adding an image, figuring out some other thing. All right, so just whatever scene you choose to do, download the appropriate PDF. And then you're going to do the same thing for the nighttime version. Your choice, again, if you choose to do interior day, you're going to have to do exterior night. If you do exterior day, interior night. Again, specific set of directions for each one. Make sense? Yes?
By exterior, do you mean just import the image and with the dome light and everything?
No, exterior means it's outside rather than inside. There are different environments you're doing.
I'm confused, I'm sorry.
So up here, those are two different scene files.
Mhm.
This one is inside. This one is outside. They are different environments, so they require different lighting.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So whichever one you choose to do here, you need to do the opposite of for night. All right, so this, you're also going to get a chance to do a composition of your own. You're basically going to choose one of our environments, rearrange stuff to create your own composition. Sort of like what you guys did for project 1 and 2. Only this time it's going to be a full-blown environment. You're going to be responsible for lighting. If there's an image outside the window, you're going to be responsible for the dome light and the image that goes in it. And basically trying to match reference that you find. So all the things you did before, this time just bigger. All right, I'll give you a couple ideas of what students have done in the past, just so you can kind of feed off that. So took our environment, kind of did that with it. Yeah, fit the bill. So you get the idea, right? Same kind of thing. You can translate, scale, rotate, duplicate. You just can't model anything. Don't import anything from another scene. Just choose whichever one works. Or it gives you the closest. But now you're not constrained by the number of lights. The only thing you're really constrained with now is just the geometry itself. But it's still basic shapes. It's still basic layout. All right, does that make sense? So in the end, you're going to do 3. The first 2 are going to be weighted the most, and then the composition you do for your own is not weighted quite as much because you're still learning. But it's a good chance to, again, play with cameras, composition, light, this time color temperature, because now you've got a lot more than just throwing color into an environment. Now you got a chance to actually make the whole environment have a temperature, a look, and a feel. Questions for that? All right, so let's see. Let's start with putting in, well, before we do any images, let's go get some resources. So down under the reading section, actually no, it's under resources. There is a link to the vizpeople.com free stuff. Free stuff is the best price ever. Part of the problem with free stuff is, though, it is non-commercial, which means you can use it, but you cannot get paid if you are using it. You need to pay the author. And if that were your stuff, you'd want to get paid for it also. So fair is fair. You can use it for educational purposes, for prototype purposes, but once somebody signs a check on it, you need to pay royalties for it. All right, so Viz People free stuff. Most of this stuff here, you have to read some of their agreements. Some are absolutely free for any use. Some are free for non-commercial. If you can't find any information about it, assume it's just free for non-commercial. Don't assume that you can use it any way you want. Most lawsuits are based on that. Oh, I thought I could use it for anything. No, you can't. All right, so the one we're interested in are the free HDRI maps updated. You click on that link, that will take you here to the Viz people, and you've got 2 mirror sites you can download from. I've got 2 choices. I don't know which one to choose. How do I know? What's a mirrored site? That frightens me. Hello, FSO support. Well, when they stop laughing, they'll go read the directions. What's a mirror? Besides, you look at it and you see something.
Alternate options.
Ulterior options? Yeah. What else? Well, on the internet, what does it mean? Good point is, if you're not sure what it means, maybe you shouldn't click on it. It's actually just a copy of the original site. A separate, usually it's a separate ISP provider, internet service provider, a separate location, separate set of servers. It's basically there as a backup in case something happens. So one part of the world, everything could be humming along. The other part of the world, something could be, could have a storm, satellite interruption, cable breakage. Anything could cause a site to be inaccessible. Now, most of the time, the internet as an entity is pretty smart. It'll reroute around outages. But what happens is you click on mirror 1. Why? Because that's the first one in the list. Everybody clicks on it, and it could get lots and lots of hits, which means the more people that are on it, the slower it's going to run. So if you click on this and it says it's going to take you 8 hours to download, cancel. Go to the second one. Literally, 6 months ago, I had a student click on the first one. It said it was going to take 8 hours and 46 minutes to download. So I said, no, cancel. Go to the second one. So they went to the second one, it was 8 minutes, literally. So again, whatever gives you the best results, does it matter? No, generally not. But a mirrored site is just a duplicate. Now, when you download your files from here, you will basically get a package that's sort of like a zip file, but it will be what's called an RAR. Similar to this. RAR is kind of an older compression format, but it is still used on the web. Most of you have the built-in Mac, Apple compression, decompression software, right? Sure. That will not handle an RAR file. So what you need to do is take a trip to the Apple Store. Why the Apple Store? Because I could send you somewhere on the internet, but then if there's free updates for it, you don't get a notification on it. At least with the Apple Store, you download it. It should be checked for viruses, because you never know what you're going to get on the internet, other than porn or viruses. So you want to make sure it's fairly clean, and you also want to make sure that if there are updates, you get them. All right, so back here, RAR Expander. So all you have to do is go to the App Store, go up here and just go RAR Expander or Extractor. Either one. Anything that's got money on it? No. Don't pay money for it. All right, so I think the one that I have is this first one, Extractor and Expander. I will tell you in a second because I have it down here. RAR Extractor.
You passed it, it was right
This is one I had. I don't think it's around anywhere. This one. Extractor. I'm pretty sure that's the one I use. Let's see. This one. You're talking about this one?
No, it was above reminders.
Ooh, okay. Wait, above reminders. Yeah, it was this one. Yeah, that one is one I got off the internet. That works also. Utilities. Sometimes it'll stick your stuff in various places. All right. Pretty sure it's the extractor. Let me see. If I right click, I can use that one. But Dr. Unarchiver is no longer with us.
You think you can type it in the search bar?
What's that?
I was saying you can type it in the search bar for.
Yeah, I have, but they stopped actually making it. They rolled it into something else. Yep. Not around anymore. RIP. Yep, gone. So, free extractor tool works great. That's this one.
Guys, don't use the burp one, the extractor expander to the right.
Yeah, that probably works okay. Let me see. I always like to look at when the last time it was updated also. Let's see. You know, either one will work as long as it expands an RAR file. That's really all you care about. And when you go to expand an RAR file, don't just double click on it. Right click once you have it installed and select the expander you want to use. Like here, I'll do that. No, I don't want that. I want an extractor. Okay, why are you doing that? There we go. Grant permissions. So it's asking me where I want to put my compressed file to. And usually it wants a folder on it. And I got too much stuff open here. Stop. Skip. Just go away, close. There we go. All right, let's try that again. Apparently not. Alright, so I'm going to go back and go get the other one, since that's not working. I love live demos because something that works fine last month doesn't always work. Alright, so let's go to extractor. Again. Nope, don't want to pay money. Alright, I'm going to go with my old standby. All right, so come on, open with, there we go. I would like to expand it there, yes. All right, so there it expanded it to my desktop. It expands the same. All right, if you have trouble on the App Store, here's something you can do. Wasn't going to point you here, but may as well. RAR Expander. This one right here, SourceForge. It's reliable. I've had it for years. Go to the download section. Click here to download. Get the latest version. Don't click anything here. It's all advertising. Just wait for it. There you go. Save it. Expand it. It's very amusing that an RAR expander is zipped when you get it, and that you have to unzip it in order to use the RAR expander to expand something else. But that's progress. So just whatever it takes to get it. Like I said, it's not going to be a waste because you will run into these formats in other places. So once you get it, you expand your files to either the desktop or to another location. They will basically look sort of like this. It will be in a folder very similar to that, VizPeople HDRI version 1. You get 2 folders and 2 PDFs. One folder contains PNGs. PNGs are for your viewing only. They are not to be used as the image inside the dome light. They are purely there for selection purposes. They're low res. The ones you want, I'll give you an example. So that's 11 megabytes for the PNG. The HDRI version is 52 megabytes. So this whole download is going to be about half a gig. But you will get 10 images out of it you can use. You also get a license agreement saying don't use this if you make money or pay us if you do. Here is an HDRI catalog of all the images, brooding picture of the artist. And then these are what they look like in all CG environments. Actually, it's going to take too long to load all the HDRs in, so we're just going to do a quick view of the PNGs. So you get a field with kind of a star filter for the sun kind of low in the sky. You kind of get the same field, but it's nighttime with a star filter in the same sky. Not nighttime, but sunset. Same field, cloudy day. Remember, you get what you pay for. It's the same area, but they're decent pictures. They're usable. Same field, a little more overcast. Same field, sun is higher in the sky. A little lower in the sky, below clouds. Field, this is actually the same environment. The field of trees is over somewhere else behind the camera. There we are. We're back to our favorite trees right here. Sort of getting towards night. Again, another one. And then finally the last one. This is actually the one we're going to use for the nighttime exterior if you choose to do the exterior night. Now, the image we give you in the source images folder inside the Maya project is basically our Zen garden, which is behind 4D back there. We have an HDR camera that we use. The trouble is, we couldn't get a good nighttime version of it because every time we went to go do it at night, it would either rain or it was overcast and we didn't get any moon. And we didn't feel like waiting 15 days to get the moon. So someday we'll go back and we'll get a really good nighttime version of it, but we weren't able to. So we found this. you say, wait a minute, that's not night. Well, technically, this is actually civil twilight because the sun is below the sky. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west in our hemisphere. And these 4 pixels over here are the moon. This is what is going to be visible to you in the window of your exterior nighttime environment, should you choose to do it. Yeah.
So the interior night, or
Inter-
just using a dome light that's like,
No, you're using the image we give you.
okay.
We give you the Zen garden image, which
Oh.
is good for the interior day and night, and the exterior day. But like I said, we didn't have a dome light image that was suitable to give you for nighttime outside. So that's why we have this one. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So if you choose to do the like if you do the exterior day, you're going to do the interior night. You don't have to worry about this image. But download it anyway because you have 10 images you can use for your comp if you want, and any of your other environments. Because I know you guys modeled stuff in model creation.
So this is only for interior night.
Exterior night.
Exterior night.
Yeah. All right, so if you're not sure, take a look inside each of the PDFs. So here, daytime, interior, oh actually this is the exterior. Here's the Zen garden image you're going to use. That's the one we supply in the source images. If you do the interior, you're going to be using our Zen garden image. If you do the interior night, you're going to use our Zen garden. If you do the exterior night, then you're going to use this one. Like I said, it's the only one with a moon in it that looks good in the window when we deal with reflections. But only for the exterior night. Make sense? Questions? All right, so when you download the project, which I'm assuming most of you did or will do, you get in there, you go into the project folder, and in source images, this is what we give you by default. There is our Zen garden. So like I said, this was done with a 360 camera. There we are hiding behind, trying to get out of the frame of the camera. But that's the image we're going to use. The Viz People one, like I said, this is for exterior night. All right, so this is the brand new one that I just did. This happened to be the day, actually it was day night that I did. It's got all kinds of lights in it. So we give you one scene file for exterior day, one for exterior night, and then we give you one file for interior because the interior is the same scene. The only thing you're doing is lighting with lamplight for night versus sunlight for day. All right, so this is kind of my guinea pig that I did before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this like daytime. So my default intensity was 1. I'm going to reassign my Pixar surface to all the light bulbs because I don't want to use them as light bulbs. There we go. All right, so there is my image. Right, went through the process earlier with you guys. So you know how to make a dome light, right? You know how to make portal lights if you need them. We know how to make mesh lights if you need them. But now we want to add an image and we want to start working off reference. So I'm just going to do this because I've got this done already, and I'll go out and I'll do one of the exteriors also. But I've already got lights in here, yes. Just now, it's the same Pixar surface that's assigned to everything. I took off the mesh lights because it's daytime now. I didn't want bulbs on there. All right. So let's take a look at what we have for the directions, interior day. All right, so everybody opened it up. I'm going to save it as, so I have a separate version. So this is going to be day. All right, now, where do you think dome light image is going to go?
The color map, maybe?
Yep, exactly. That's where it's going to go. Now, as long as you have your project set, we give you that Zen Garden image, which again is right here. That is in your source images folder. So as long as you have your project set, and you click on the button, it should, well, it didn't for me, but it theoretically should take you to your project folder. And there's witness of how Maya hates me. All right, so here's source images. Now, here's something you guys are going to want to change because this is going to be new for all of you. Down at the bottom, when you go to bring an image into a dome light, the default files of type are not going to be set properly. This is set for textures. What kind of image are we giving you?
EX.
What did you do to map the thing to the light again? Oh, wait, never mind, I see it.
Yep, in the attributes, you want to go to color map. All right, so down at the bottom, we give you what? HDR. So we don't give you a texture file. So what you want to do is change the files of type to be any.
You said any?
Any. And what you want to select is the HDR. Now, I've already got a TEX file in there, and here's what happens. When you bring an image into RenderMan, RenderMan converts the image format into its own format so it can render it faster. It converts everything into what's called a TEX file. So you're going to see a lot of that. Anytime you want to bring an image into Maya, don't use the TEX, use the original format. It'll either be Targa, it'll be TIFF, it'll be HDR, it might even be PNG. The TEX file is what RenderMan creates on its own. Now, so you can also switch it over to just images, and it will completely ignore the TEX files and only show you the HDR. So either one works, just make sure you choose the right one. All right, so you click open, give it a second or two. It may take a couple of seconds for it to load in. And before I render, let me do something here to kind of mimic what you guys are going to run across. Let me get rid of all my TEX stuff. I don't want any converted files. There we go. All right, so what I want to have is pretty much what you guys will have. Put it in for the first time, and now I want to render. Now notice there's no image there. It's all solid blue. What RenderMan is doing is it is converting the file to a TEX, and when it's done, it will display the image. Or you could get impatient like me and stop it and then re-render it again. Let it finish its thing. So let me just stop it. Give it a second. Play Jeopardy theme in your head once. Alright, when you're done, re-render again from the render cam. And still working on it. Anybody get to work yet? You did? Yeah. You have to fast the computer. Yeah.
So I was looking down the dome light for that image, right where it says, old preview that we did image of. So the dome light, it says dome light and go to image base, so I see it right there. And it's blocked.
Color matter in the dome light attributes.
All in the folder,
Yep. That's where it gets plugged into. Yes. Yes. No, don't play with those. Color management is in the Maya preferences in the preferences. Settings and preferences. The color management in here will change how things are viewed in the image pool. And you don't want to adjust any color management in the image pool. Does that make sense? It should be on by default for you. Like I said, most of the stuff we give you is going to be on, but stuff you get from the outside. All right, so this didn't convert yet. Let me stop it. Start it again. Did you stop it and start it? There we go. Finally got it. It only took like a half hour to do. What's that? Because it wasn't converted to the TEX file. You have to, when you first start off importing anything new into RenderMan, it's going to display either solid blue or it's going to say RenderMan with blue letters until it converts and then it'll go. No. You have to kick off a render for it to convert.
So now that I have rendered, I close it and render it again.
Well, don't close it. Just stop your render and re-render. IPR won't catch up and display sometimes. You guys to work?
Yes.
Okay. Just select all the bulbs and assign the Pixar Surface 1. You're just assigning the same material that's on everything else. Yeah. Did you expand your RAR?
Yeah, I got it downloaded.
Inside the HDR folder,
Yeah.
number 10? Number 10 is the image you want to use for the nighttime exterior.
I was talking about that website. So
The Viz people, yeah.
yeah. I was making sure I did it correctly. I
We-
want to get it done.
Okay, you downloaded it, and as long as you expanded it and you got that stuff in there, that's fine. All right, so I got my image in here now, but I want to make sure that things work the way they should. And what does that mean? Well, we've got reference images for you to help you position the image inside the dome light. Because it's not one of those where you just drop it in and then everything is where it should be. Now, we're going to have to wind up matching the position of it. And this is where your reference comes in. So we give you 4 different reference folders. So interior day reference. There's the dome light with portals. There's the dome light with portals and the sun. So there's 2 references. This is the one you want to try to match for the position of the dome light and the intensity. And for the dome light, you're only going to rotate it in the y-axis. So you would bring this in, just like you would any other reference image, into the image tool. Just like you did with projects 2 and 3. So File, Open File. You want to go in, find your reference. Right, so what I need to do is start rotating my light, and that's my dome. You don't want to rotate the portals because they're going to be stationary. So what I need to do is select my dome light. And I'm actually going to go outside my environment so I can see exactly where everything is. There's my center right there. Okay. Now, in order for me to be able to do this accurately, I need to render while I turn my dome light. So I'm going to kick off an IPR from the render cam. And I'm going to choose whether I want to go clockwise or counterclockwise. Does it matter? Nope, it's still going to get you the same position. It doesn't matter. All right, so when I rotate, my image will shift once it catches up. There we go. How will you know when you're close? Well, you're going to start to see that little bit of fake carpet. It is carpet, but it's supposed to be grass with some tables show up. Ah, there we go. It's starting to get closer. You rotate it a little bit more. Now, of course, I could have overshot the mark. Alright, so I'm going to stop this. Look at my reference. Let me see what it looks like in my render cam here. Yep. Looks like I went too far. This looks sort of like what I want somewhere around there. There's tables. Like I said, I can always go outside and go, oh yeah, there's my grass right here. There's my tables. There's me hiding. Alright, let's go back inside. Bring up the image tool. Where are you? What I'm trying to do is line up the position of my dome light. Then I'm going to do the intensity. Then the color. Color being color temperature. Alright, so I'm getting close. Yeah, it looks like I overshot it, so I got to come back a little. Now, occasionally, like everything Maya, the IPR may be lying to you, so you may have to restart again your IPR. Alright, so getting closer. There's my bench. There's my table. Now, part of the problem with using the rotate tool is it can be quite imprecise. So you can always go into your channel box and start rotating it by degree. So for example, let's try changing it by 1 degree. What does that look like? Well, went too far. What else could I do to make this work a little faster? Well, I could restart it. That would definitely help. But couldn't I use just a small region? That would make it seem a little more efficient, because then I could just hit R and have it refresh. And then I could see where I was going with it. I don't have to render the whole thing, because the only thing I care about is what's outside the window. And of course, guess what happens when you do that? You have to be in the render cam. Remember, Maya hates you too. Alright, so let's try that again. Let's try hitting R and see what we get. Alright, so it looks like I got pretty close. I just got tired of trying to spin the wheel and just typed in numbers. And using the render region or that cropped area really makes a difference. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of this. And I want to render the entire frame just to make sure I'm on the right place. Alright, so as far as intensity goes, so far I've only got my dome light in here. Well, dome light and portal light. I need to increase the intensity. So that's going to be the dome light. The dome light's going to provide the energy for all the portals. So what you want to do is increase until you get to the level that you see in your reference. As you increase the intensity, you're going to get more energy. It's going to go into the room. Bright enough yet? Alright, so when in doubt, I'm going to double it until I've either overshot the mark or I figure out what's going on here. So what I'm looking for not only is how bright it is in the environment, on the floor, on the walls, but also how bright is the image. Alright, intensity doesn't look too bad. Part of the problem is How's my color temperature? Too cold, yep. So, for one thing, I have enabled color temperature here. So if I want to make it warmer, which direction do I go? How far should I go? Yep, until it matches the reference. So it's at 6,500. Let's try 6,000. Work? All right, let's try 55. Yes.
Yeah. The term that color temperature all the way down to 1,000 and it still looks too blue.
All right. So color temperature down to 1,000, and it still looks awful. Right. Yep. We need to do the portals as well. So I'm going to go back, put this at 6,500. And I'm going to select one of my portal lights, preferably the one that's right outside the window, because that's really going to tell me what I need to know. This one right here. We have to turn on enable color temperature. And let's take this one down to 1,000. There we go. Bingo! Yes?
So, you were working in the dome light earlier, right?
Right.
So, even though it's a dome light and that's like above the portal light, you just sometimes have to go to the portal light?
Well, in this case, I don't know why they did it, but they made the color temperature independent from the dome. To be honest, the version before 22 in RenderMan, the dome light drove everything. So, bottom line is, when they make updates, stuff gets changed sometimes. And unfortunately, your workflow has to change with it. And part of the problem with getting a new version, which is why we say never change over in the middle of a production, is because all of a sudden now, I don't know how to make my dome lights or how to make my color temperature work when I got portals and domes both. So fortunately, we're able to figure this one out. So 6,000, let's try that. How does that compare to my reference? Not really. Let's try that. That's looking a little closer. We're getting there. Yeah. No. No, they're independent of Maya's hierarchy kind of hypernode system, I guess, hypergraph system. All right, so that's a lot closer. So what I'm going to do is, just for good measure, I'm going to turn my dome, my other portal, all to the same color temperature. Just so I don't have any inconsistencies. Why? Because the next version of RenderMan, they may fix it and it may go back. And I'm paranoid, not because they're coming to get me, because they are. Enable color temperature. Let's just make everybody the same. Everybody in the pool. There we go. Right, so does that kind of make sense? So dome light, the nice thing is with the exterior right now, you guys don't have to worry about, if you're doing the exterior day, you choose to do that, the position of the dome light's not going to be as critical because you're not going to see it in the reflections in the window yet. Plus, we also give you some reference for that. All right, so in addition to getting the portal dome light reference, This is what it's going to look like when you add in your distant light for the sun if you choose to do the interior day. So the distant light is an infinite wall of light. Theoretically, you could leave it inside the room and aim it. Personally, I prefer it outside the window so I can visualize where the light rays are coming, because those arrows symbolize the light rays. And I want those light rays to come in at an angle and hit the wall and the floor. Does that make sense? All right, so if you choose to do the exterior day, there's your dome light. That's dome light with the sun. Now we give you some kind of basically positional pictures. Kind of like what we did in the, or what Digital Camera World did in the portrait guide. I give you an idea of where it's at. So there's kind of a 3/4 shot from the back. You can kind of see where my light is. This will also give you an idea of where your image should be outside the window. Or not outside the window, but your image should be behind the camera for when we have a reflection on the window. All right, nighttime. That's what your dome light is going to contribute. Basically nothing. Most of the lighting, except for a little bit of the ambient color, is going to come from these. These are LED candles, by the way. They are not going to be candles with flames. And the actual flame geometry is what you select and you make those mesh lights. All right, so a couple of guides. When you drop in the Viz People image, the moon should automatically more or less be behind the camera. As long as it drops in and it's behind the camera, you should be good to go. Now this is a facade, so again, nothing is modeled that's not seen to the camera. And what we want to do is we're sticking the brightest part of the dome light image behind the facade. You're not going to be able to see through it. So this is what's going to be visible in the window when we actually have materials on it. All right, so for the nighttime in the interior, you're going to be using the Zen Garden image. And all you have to do is drop the intensity down. Make it nighttime. Add in your mesh lights. We added mesh lights already in there, so you guys know how to do that. And there's one other light behind the camera just to add a little bit of fill in there in the front. So it's not completely dark. And some positional guides for you. Give you an idea of where that light is. It's right behind the camera.
Is there another one in there?
What's that?
Look like there's another one.
There's a fill light behind the camera.
No, like on the other view.
On the other view?
Like, yeah, what's that like a lamp? Which one? By the lamp, there's like a light or something.
This?
No, down to your left. Yeah, right there. What's that?
That's a mug in the scene. And then that's a thermos container, sort of like this on the table. That just the wireframe happens to be, instead of blue, it happens to be white. Yeah, no, this is the only other light. So you got your dome light, you got portal lights, but that's adding very little light because it's night. All your lights are coming from the mesh lights in the lamp, and then there's this one little fill light in the back here that just adds a little bit of extra light in the front. But all the heavy lifting is done here.
And you just mess with the temperature of the mesh lights then?
Temperature of the mesh lights to match the reference, yeah. Intensity and temperature. The good news is, with mesh lights, you don't have to worry about direction. because it's already in there. Now, if you're modeling the scene and you have to match what's in your reference, then you got to make sure that your model is in the right position to match the reference. So when you light it, it looks like your reference. Does that make sense? Questions? Yes.
Show the mesh light tab on mine real quick, just so I see what it's at.
Mesh light in Maya. All right, so this is your mesh light button right here. Kind of looks like a yellow sphere with blue wireframe on it. And it's really the only option there is. There's no other right click for options. That is the only thing it does, that button.
So you select the object.
Select object, click on the button. Now, with our lamps, since we want them all to be the same light bulb, like we bought a 4-pack from Home Depot and put them in our lamp, they're all going to be same age, same color, same temperature, same wattage. So once you can assign all the lights with the same Pixar black together, or you can assign them separately. But if you assign it separately, each one's going to have its own intensity, and you have to go around 4 different times and change the intensity. It's better to do it with the same one. Especially since, like, if you're doing this room, you can pretty much guess they're all the same wattage, the same color temperature for the track lights in our ceiling. So I would personally start with making them all the same mesh. But if later on I find out, well, the middle one's older, it's kind of weak, it's dying, then I might have to go in and add a separate one to it, just to control it completely different from the others. Yeah.
And using that example, would you just disconnect that one from the other one?
Yep,
Or-
I would assign like the Pixar surface to it, make sure I break the connection, select it, create a new mesh light just for that one. Good question. Any other questions? Yes.
I guess, I don't know, I just like getting examples, I guess. But,
Okay, sure.
So like for a car or something, you'd like, you know how there's like a bunch of like little tiny lights like inside of,
The headlight?
yeah, the
Okay.
headlight or the backlight, you just, I don't know, just have all those and then,
Well, it depends on how old the car is. Because older cars have a single bulb inside and they just have a reflector or a diffuser on the outside. Modern lights, they're all like LED settings in there, modules. So you could probably, I mean, you would have to model all the bulbs or all the, whatever you wanted to do in there, and you could just assign the same mesh light to it.
gotcha.
That would work. Like a headlight. You know, you'd have the lens on the front, and you'd have the bulb inside. So you make the bulb inside your mesh. Or if it's like a far away shot and all you want to see is just the glare of a headlight, you could select the lens and make that your mesh. Remember, it's level of detail.
Yeah.
Like, do I need to see the light going through the lens? Is it a close-up? Or from the distance of the camera, does it just look like the whole thing's lit?
Cool.
Yeah, depending, one or the other is going to make it more efficient to render. Like if you don't have to go through an object with a mesh light, it's going to take less time to render. But if you make it so you've got the lens, that lens has got to be out of glass or plastic, it's got to be the right thickness, we have to assign the right material property to it so it behaves the right way. Yes?
Now, what if there was like a type of atmosphere involved, like fog? You can see the beam through the fog, and like say if you take the headlight and you assigned
Mhm.
like a mesh light to the bulb, would you also need to put like a light to show the beam?
No, that would be something different. Tony asked that. That's kind of what we call volumetric lighting, where it's just like, you know, in every TV show, horror movie, film, game, whenever they have a flashlight or they want to make a light visible, they always make it so you can see that ray of light. So basically what you do is you make a volume or an area that you want to have particles or something in, so when the light goes through it, it becomes visible. There are, like Maya's got some old cheats that work, but RenderMan doesn't like them. RenderMan's got its own thing that you have to do. So for our purposes, it's a little beyond what we want to do right now. But yes, you can do that. And it looks really cool.
Did you do one for demonstration purposes?
Not today, but maybe later. I don't want to confuse it. No, I want everybody to get this first. All right, questions? Everybody good? Yes.
Could you go back to the slide on the mapping thing?
Sure. You mean for the HDR images?
Yeah.
Yep. That one, right? So if you are using Arnold, Arnold will understand how to do angular. You've got a choice between them. We used to use, before Arnold and RenderMan came along, we used to use a program called Mental Ray, and they could understand either one here. But Pixar has chosen just to focus on one to kind of not muddy the waters. And to be honest, this is kind of like the most common standard one you'll find on the internet. Now, finding good free ones is another thing. Like the site I gave you, they're pretty good. There's a couple other sites. I'll give you a couple other addresses later on if you guys want to download stuff for your own purposes, you can do it. You just have to kind of trial and error with free HDR images. So, yeah, light probes, like I said, that's kind of an older one. Not really doing a whole lot with them, at least RenderMan anyway. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? Anything not clear? Yeah.
Will you ever see the scene of like your image?
That's a good question. Let's take a look. The way these are done, it should be pretty minimal when you do it, but that's a real good question. So let me go outside the room here. And let's go out. All right, so where should we go from? Well, right here, this is probably as close as you're going to see to a seam. There's double of me there. But basically the camera that we had stitched all the images together really well. And that's the thing. It was a 360 camera with lenses on both sides. And they're both like fisheye lenses. And what it does is you put it on a little stand. Remotely, you can use your camera or your phone to trigger it. It goes off. It takes two images, and then it stitches them together. It finds where the points are that are theoretically supposed to be in sync with each other, because the camera makes its own images, so it knows where it can position stuff. So it has a little bit of software that just makes all the images kind of overlap. And you're going to see stuff like this, but most of the time you can get away with having that out there. Unless you're like outside in the field and your character is doing a 360 turnaround. And then that way what you would do is you would probably hide it some other way. Put clouds there or something else. But it depends. I've had other images where they've been bad, and yeah, you can see the image, the scene. Actually, let's see how good the Viz People one is. So that was actually stitched together pretty well. It's really hard to see. Like, I know it's somewhere around the edge of the moon because when you look at the flat image, you got the moon on the left and that bright area on the right. So, I mean, it's stitched together really well. So it's probably done with a higher end camera. Right, questions? Yes.
So, say you want the picture outside to small, can you scale it?
No.
No?
You can scale the dome, but the dome is still meant to look like it's infinitely far away. So while it looks like you scale it, when you go to render it, it tries to show actual, the normal size.
There's no way to get that picture any smaller?
No, unless you get the image that you want built that way.
Okay.
And that's always one of the downfalls of using a set HDR image. And what we wound up doing in the past is, I've got another scene that we're working on that we're going to use for the exterior. Wound up taking and doing another shot of it in a neutral location and then building the environment that we wanted so it matched the hole that we had in the sky that looked right. We just basically had to reposition everything we wanted to do to get it to look right. It worked in that instance, but like I tried to move the image a couple times, and even in Photoshop, it doesn't work right.
So it's not very easy.
No, it's not very easy. And if you go into Photoshop and play with it, a lot of times if you don't know what you're doing, you can screw up the HDR quality. Like it tries to apply all these HDR filters for you to do stuff, and you think, oh, great, but then you get it back in and you render it and you realize, wow, that just killed it. So, long story, no. Short story, no. Not easy. All right. Any other questions? All right. Good time for dinner break.